If your quest for longevity feels overwhelming, here's some good news. It starts with one simple daily habit. MitoPure gummies from Timeline. They're the first ever longevity gummies that ignite mitophagy, your body's natural anti-aging pathway. MitoPure is a clinically validated solution backed by over 15 years of research. MitoPure gummies utilize a powerful compound that redefines what's possible for your longevity. MitoPure produces the first ever urolithin A gummies that support your cellular energy so you feel strong, clear, and vibrant. Boost your cellular energy and enhance muscle strength and endurance, all without changing your diet or exercise routine. As someone who loves to stay active, I've noticed a significant boost in my workouts since I started using it. I feel stronger and more energized, and my recovery time has improved dramatically. Better recovery starts at the cellular level. For more information and to order, just go to timeline.com/Hoffman. Use coupon code Hoffman at checkout for 20% off. That's timeline.com/Hoffman for 20% off MitoPure gummies with code Hoffman. Welcome to today's Intelligent Medicine Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Ronald Hoffman. Today we're going to talk about immune regulation. You know, there's so much of talk about immunity, and we talk about supplements that, quote, boost your immunity, but there's a more nuanced story behind it, because the immune system is not like the dimmer switch in your dining room. It is a very, very complex system, and there are inputs. We can actually regulate our immune system depending on our diet, and certain supplements can have a profound effect on optimizing our immune function. We're talking about optimization, not necessarily raising, not necessarily suppressing, say, an autoimmune disease. Today's guest is an expert on the subject. He is Dr. Austin Perlmutter. He is Chief Science Officer of Big Bold Health, a company that is devoting itself, its mission statement is to develop products that have an immune regulatory effect. And if that name resonates for you, yes, he is related to Dr. David Perlmutter, who's been a frequent guest here on Intelligent Medicine, a good colleague of mine. So too is Dr. Austin Perlmutter, who is related. In fact, he is the son of Dr. David Perlmutter. And together, they have collaborated on research. And in fact, he has co-authored the New York Times bestseller book, Brainwash, which is the latest book that he and Dr. David Perlmutter have written. His research, he currently oversees clinical studies exploring the effects of nutraceuticals on human aging and the microbiome. And he's been featured all over on the media, PBS, NPR, Rolling Stone, Newsweek. He hosts podcasts and produces major online health summits, including the Better Brain Blueprint. His medical degrees from the University of Miami, his residency at the Oregon Health and Science University, and he is really one of the leading lights in the field of integrative and functional medicine. So without further ado, and in addition, he is Chief Science Officer at Big Bold Health, a company that is focusing on some of these issues. So great having you back on Intelligent Medicine. We visited you with you before. Welcome, Austin. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me back. And what an intro. I don't know if I can live up to that, but I'll try.
Oh my goodness. No, you deserve all the accolades because, it's interesting because way back when I was beginning my career in integrative medicine, there were doctors like Dr. Atkins. And typically the career path of a doctor like Dr. Atkins was he went into cardiology. He was a conventional cardiologist for a while. He became disillusioned after many years of practice. He said he wasn't getting his patients better. He sought a better solution. Then he became interested in nutrition, developing the Atkins diet, got interested in supplements and alternative medicine. The career path was a path of disillusionment. But it sounds like you garnered your credentials, you went to pre-med and medical school, and you had a vision that you were going to pursue the best of high-tech medicine and the best of natural therapies.
I think that's partially true. I don't want to say what's the opposite of being disillusioned. Illusioned. I don't want to say I've been fully illusioned my whole life, but I think that things are different now than they were a couple of decades ago for a number of different reasons. And one of the biggest ones is the advent of what modern technology can do to understand what's going wrong and what we can do about it. So there are many systems in the body for which that's incredibly relevant. I've been fascinated in particular with what we can do to program our brains for the better. And it's kind of this catch-22 because we've got in some ways the best science ever in terms of telling us how to program our brains for the better, and we have at the same time some of the most addictive, unhealthy inputs that humanity has ever known, whether it's social media or what we see on TV, the foods that are all around us, the conditioning we're getting in terms of what's healthy. So it's a very unique time to be, I guess, a doctor, but maybe more importantly, to be in healthcare, especially with the advent of AI and big data and what that represents in terms of hopefully improving patient outcomes.
And you've had the extraordinary opportunity to collaborate with Dr. Jeffrey Bland, who's been a mentor to all of us, certainly a mentor to me early in my career, who is also a prime mover and founder of Big Bold Health. And so, partaking of, it's really an amazing brain trust there at Big Bold Health with your participation and with, input from Dr. David Perlmutter, your dad, and of course, Dr. Jeffrey Bland. So what is the mission and focus of Big Bold Health? How did it get started and what's the unifying theme?
For those who don't know Dr. Jeffrey Bland, he's a nutritional biochemist by trade. He's been in the industry for coming up on 50 years, and his whole belief system has been built around the idea that when we understand biology and can target it selectively using especially nutrition, that we can not only improve outcomes for people with diseases, but maybe more importantly, prevent diseases from happening and really optimize health in the immediacy. And so he's been involved in, he's done over 100 different peer-reviewed studies. He's published a number of different books, all based on this concept. But what Big Bold Health has been about is translating that really comprehensive history of research and learning to one system specifically, which is the immune system. And the rationale behind this is when you look at what is driving disease and disability today, many people know about chronic inflammation as a major problem. But when you get down to the nitty gritty and understanding what's behind it all, it's really this interface between the immune system and metabolism, so-called immunometabolism. And importantly, while many people, I'd say most people, are conscious of the idea that the immune system can be, quote, boosted, meaning if you're going to get on a plane and don't want to catch whatever your seatmate is coughing on you, you take some vitamin C, some elderberry, and boost your immune system, that the reality is that each of our immune systems comprises 100 plus different types of signals, different types of cells. And when you understand that degree of nuance, not only do you have a much better comprehension of what boosting is supposed to be and what may actually kind of equate to what people want to get out of boosting, but you start to see how immune function maps onto things like weight gain, to longevity, to brain health, to glucose management. And when that's the case, and you appreciate just how significant this is, I mean, for example, last year's Nobel Prize went for the discovery of a certain type of immune cell. I mean, this is big, big science, but when you understand how important it is, then the question becomes, what can we do about it? And so Big Bold Health is predicated on the concept that targeted nutrition can allow for the immune system to rejuvenate towards a more healthful state, and that the output of making those types of changes is not only a long life, just purely longevity, but a healthier, longer life. And so there's a ton of science here from leading institutions around the world and the top tier journals on earth talking about this concept that you can help to reprogram and rejuvenate the immune system. The challenge is that has gotten, or it's so different from, I guess, what most people understand, both from a medical perspective and certainly from a consumer perspective in terms of what is happening within our immune system. So our MO for the company is not only to educate people on this science, but actually to perform some of the science. And so we've been involved in a lot of research over the last several years, everything from large-scale randomized controlled trials to pilot studies using concentrates to help improve immune system function, to a lot of kind of guinea pig studies, everything from slapping CGMs on all the employees to see the effects of various foods,
There's
to
the
doing
continuous glucose monitors that give you
correct,
like a
correct,
continuous
continuous glucose
readout of your
monitors.
blood sugars. Yeah.
Absolutely. And so the idea here is not just to, help make people understand what the research is already telling us about correlations between, for example, diet and the immune system, but also to further this realm of food as medicine, specifically around how it can program immunity to a healthier state. And just to get back to where we started this, Dr. Bland is probably the most prodigious reader of science of any person I've ever interacted with. He reads every journal I've ever heard of, and then many I haven't. And so we are perpetually trying to digest the growing amount of research specific to how the immune system maps onto longevity, onto various health outcomes, onto nutrition. And it's been biting off, at least initially, a little bit more than we could chew. But we've gotten to the point now with the research that we're doing internally and our network of practitioners and the general public, where I think we're finally starting to see things change. And, just in the last couple of years, you've seen a lot of other companies, a lot of people starting to wake up to the idea that we've really gotten immunity wrong, and that when we get it right, it is perhaps the single biggest opportunity we have to improve our health.
What are some of your flagship projects? What have you
Sure.
honed in on in terms of uh, practical nutritional tools to modulate our immunity, not necessarily raise or put the brakes on immunity? Because conventional medicine does that. I mean, there's things that are immune stimulants that we're now using in immunotherapy and cancer. Uh, what's interesting, when you use those, you get the immune system revved up, and the immune system then attacks the cancer. But there are consequences for the body. The body experiences horrible, sometimes autoimmune side effects, sometimes life-threatening side effects. So that's kind of the immune system in overdrive. And then conversely, if you have an inflammatory disorder, you're often given prednisone, or you might be given some of these newer biologic drugs, which shut down your immune system, and they help to reduce the pain of arthritis or the flare-ups of ulcerative colitis, but they may render you more susceptible to weird infectious diseases, like fungal diseases of the lung or tuberculosis, because they so dramatically dampen your immune system. So I think big medicine, big pharma understands the central role that immunity plays, but we're using kind of a sledgehammer approach to modulating immunity.
You're absolutely right. And this is why, even if you take one step into the field of applied immunology in terms of therapeutics, you will understand just how complicated it is. So, the same drug that may prove life-saving for a person in an acute setting, let's say a steroid, can long-term lead to insulin resistance, can lead to diabetes, can lead to Cushingoid symptoms, right? So these are not trivial, lock and key type mechanism drugs. And the same can be said, as you described, for things like tumor necrosis factor alpha blockers, these biologics. They're amazing therapeutics, but we're really talking about super intense mechanisms that have these additional effects on the body. One thing most people aren't aware of is chances are you're on an immune active medication. If you take a daily aspirin, if you take an Advil, I mean, the way that these drugs work is through the immune system. We just don't think about it in that way. What people tend to think about, however, is a very simplified version of what's happening with the immune system, which is inflammation. And so we think, oh, well, inflammation high, take a drug, bring it down, and therefore you're in a good spot. Or immune system is low, take some vitamin C, boost it, and now you're in a good space. But it's a far more nuanced conversation. And just to go back to this one specific reference with, let's say, prednisone or really any sort of corticosteroid, it's a strange thing that in the acute setting, when you use a steroid, it is a potent anti-inflammatory, but chronically, if you have elevation in kind of your corticosteroid pathway, what we think about, for example, with HPA axis dysfunction, that it may actually promote chronic inflammation. So there are kind of these checks and balances within the body that require you to keep things in a certain Goldilocks zone. And if they don't go and stay in those Goldilocks zones, then things can go really wrong. But just to go back to
I
the
was going to
conversation
just
about,
say
yeah, go ahead.
parenthetically, with this dimmer analogy, it's a dimmers in two
Sure.
dimensions, goes up or down. I tend to tell people, like, let's do a thought experiment where if you can imagine a dimmer, not just in two dimensions, not even just three, but imagine 50 or 100 dimensions where the dimmer is going back and forth on a lot of different axes in a lot of different dimensions. It's hard to imagine that without kind of computer modeling, but that's how complex it is. But anyway, go ahead.
Well, it's very hard to reconcile the reality of what you just said with the messages that we hear on social media, on TV, et cetera, which are so binary, right? If something is bad, you make it good. If something is low, you make it high. And I think it does us a huge disservice when we consolidate one of the most complicated and incredible systems within the body, again, the immune system, into these restricted binaries, because it in essence means that you get right back to the model that all of us were taught, I think, in medical training, which is until something is bad enough to merit intervention, it's almost non-existent. And so, as we're talking about preventive medicine, I focus a lot on brain health. So, if a person's mood is bad enough or cognition is bad enough for them to be diagnosed with a code that leads to a therapeutic, then we say they have a condition. But when a person's decades before the development of those things and things are starting to slip downwards, there's really nothing that can be done based on standard algorithms. But when we start to get back to this nuance and saying, well, you may not have met the threshold for elevation in this inflammatory marker, but you're trending in that direction. That's where the biggest opportunity is, especially through lifestyle modification, to put things back on track. And so our focus has been, again, on this kind of spectrum of signals that relate to the interface between what most people would call purely immune markers and what most people would call purely metabolic markers. It turns out there is a dynamic two-way conversation. So hemoglobin A1C interacts with a marker like interleukin 6, which some people would say that doesn't make sense. Why would an inflammatory marker correlate with a metabolic marker? And the reason is because the immune system and metabolism don't exist in separate buildings. They don't even exist kind of in separate apartments. They're living in the same place, breathing the same air, consuming the same food that you consume. And so they're each programmed and bidirectionally are interacting with everything that we do. So our goal has been in part to demythologize this, but also to collect the data to find out how these things are being impacted by things like lifestyle. And so our current kind of research is focused on the effects of nutritional interventions on these types of parameters. There's a lot of, I think, misconception from the general public in terms of what should be considered a immune or a metabolic marker. And so a lot of our work has been on trying to work with select clinicians to understand how these things move in parallel and where might be the most important of these markers to target using nutritional interventions to help to bring things back to a state of relative equilibrium. But just to kind of get back to, I think, the focus of the question is, well, what do you do about this? Certainly, all the lifestyle interventions that people are aware of play a role. So everything from sleep to exercise to stress to interpersonal communication, your social relationships, getting time outside, these things influence the immune system, whether it's by way of the microbiome or by way of metabolism or by way of literal programming of the immune cells because, for example, you're consuming the nutrients necessary to ensure that your Tregs are basically accomplishing what they need to. Everything we do is a vote for or against a healthy immune system. But we've kind of isolated three major categories of nutrients that seem to be preferentially involved in the regulation of day-to-day immune function and that seem to be relatively deficient in the typical public. And so what we look at here are going to be one that most people are quite familiar with, omega-3s and their associated metabolites. We'll talk about that maybe more in a moment. The next group is going to be these plant molecules, the so-called dark matter of the plant universe, things like polyphenols that most people have thought about for years as relatively either throwaway molecules or only interesting because they act as antioxidants. It turns out they have a specific immune signaling effect, and we've been studying that in our peer-reviewed research. And then the third category are these gut-focused molecules, the prebiotics, the probiotics, the postbiotics, because if there's one thing that maybe some people at least are aware of, it's that the majority of the immune system in terms of cell count is going to be located in and around the GI tract. And so we can talk about why that's the case, but the salient takeaway here is it's present there because it is listening to what is happening in your GI tract, and in particular, what your gut microbiome is telling your immune system. So when we bring in the types of nutrients and interventions that target those three systems, that's where we're starting to find some really interesting outcomes in terms of patient outcomes, but also changing some of these immunometabolic parameters that we've already discussed.
Okay, folks, at this point, let's pause and allow one of our sponsors an opportunity to share an important message with you. So here goes. Listen up, please. If your quest for longevity feels overwhelming, here's some good news. It starts with one simple daily habit. MitoPure gummies from Timeline. They're the first ever longevity gummies that ignite mitophagy, your body's natural anti-aging pathway. MitoPure is a clinically validated solution backed by over 15 years of research. MitoPure gummies utilize a powerful compound that redefines what's possible for your longevity. MitoPure produces the first ever urolithin A gummies that support your cellular energy so you feel strong, clear, and vibrant. Boost your cellular energy and enhance muscle strength and endurance, all without changing your diet or exercise routine. As someone who loves to stay active, I've noticed a significant boost in my workouts since I started using it. I feel stronger and more energized, and my recovery time has improved dramatically. Better recovery starts at the cellular level. For more information and to order, just go to timeline.com/Hoffman. Use coupon code Hoffman at checkout for 20% off. That's timeline.com/Hoffman for 20% off MitoPure gummies with code Hoffman.
Are you ready to experience the future of digestive wellness with Dr. Ohhira's new and revolutionary postbiotic fermented food concentrate? Capsule-free and in individual sachet packets that harness the power of 5 years of fermentation and over 500 concentrated bioactive postbiotics. Dr. Ohhira's postbiotic fermented food concentrate is a nutrient-dense paste designed to supercharge your digestive health, aid in nutrient absorption, and support whole-body immune wellness. Each sachet packet delivers a potent blend of fermented paste and prebiotics which serve as fuel for your body's own unique gut microbiome. This concentrate supports your entire digestive tract, does not need refrigeration, non-GMO, dairy, and gluten-free. Dr. Ohhira's postbiotic fermented food concentrate. It is the ultimate embodiment of traditional Japanese fermented craftsmanship, designed for those who seek the highest concentration of nature's restorative power in every serving. Ask your natural products retailer for it today or online at essentialformulas.com.
Thanks for listening, and thanks for supporting our sponsors. They are what make Intelligent Medicine a continuing free resource to you. And now back to today's guest, Dr. Austin Perlmutter. Well, let's focus for a moment on omega-3s, because there's a central paradox about this. There's no question, and this is from epidemiological research, that people who consume a lot of fish enjoy a lot of health benefits, universal health benefits, brain benefits, cardiovascular benefits, regulation of autoimmunity, on and on it goes. And yet the paradox is that sometimes when, in our infinite wisdom, we try to isolate parts thereof, purify, distill, using kind of a pharmaceutical model and say, let's take the active ingredient, DHA or EPA, as we sometimes see in some of the pharmaceutical brands and many of the supplement brands. They really want to focus on these so-called hard-hitting omega-3 essential fatty acids that when the studies are done, some of the studies are positive, but sometimes paradoxically, the studies don't mirror the benefits of simply eating fish. What's up with that?
Yeah, it's such a great question. And the first thing I'll say is we humans have so much hubris around thinking that all of a sudden, because we've identified a couple of molecules in a food, that we know exactly what's in that food. And if we can just give people the right level of fiber, magnesium, vitamin B, then it's equivalent to eating the real thing. And I think we've seen this play out in a most pronounced way with this concept of stripping away nutrition from food and then enriching food and somehow imagining that that's equivalent.
So,
That
so
a
when
low
people are deficient in fiber, we give them Metamucil or something like that.
Yeah. Or for example, we say that we're going to take some wheat, we're going to strip away all the best parts of it, and then we're going to enrich that flour with some vitamin B. Or an even more extreme example would be we're going to concoct a breakfast dessert that is almost devoid of anything that your body actually needs, especially a young kid's brain or body really needs. And then we're going to throw back in some vitamins and minerals, and it's going to offset the fact that you're getting an insane amount of refined carbs and sugar per serving. And I think that's really what we're talking about here, which is to say that humans have positioned themselves as smarter than nature. A lot of that's just marketing, right? It's, this cup of frosted, sugary flakes, let's say, is part of a complete breakfast.
Which
Yeah,
contains
sure,
some whole grains. It has some whole grains, a token amount.
It does. It does. I would just go on record saying I think the breakfast cereal has been a disaster, but I do think there are some that are better than others. It does have some whole grains. There are certainly a lot of health benefits associated with whole grain consumption. But here we're also talking about opportunity cost, which is if you're eating that bowl of sugary flakes, you're probably not eating the things that are best suited and best studied to benefit your body. But a little bit beside the point, if we go back to this conversation around omega-3s, this is an ongoing multi-decade type thing. There have been thousands of studies showing these correlations between omega-3s and various biological benefits. You mentioned cardiovascular, brain, et cetera. But the reality of it is, and especially in this day and age, that people don't know that all of these concerns they have around seed oils directly apply to the way that omega-3 products are conventionally produced. And if you say, well, I don't like consuming this canola oil because it's been highly refined, take aside for a moment the omega-6, omega-3 debate, which I think has been kind of fraught with inconsistencies. But people don't like seed oils because they would say they're highly refined, because they've been bleached, they've been deodorized, they've been exposed to high heat, and that makes them less healthy. And then just simply ask the question of how is your fish oil made? And the reality of it is that all of these things that people are concerned about are happening in fish oil production. So fish oils are bleached, deodorized, they are treated with high heat, and maybe most importantly, in order for people to get the types of doses that they are most desirous of, right? So I want 3 grams of EPA and DHA in a small amount of fish oil. That initial product coming out of the fish has to be highly, highly refined, and it actually has to usually be esterified, which converts the triglyceride, or the natural form of oil in a fish, to a relatively synthetic form that is not found in nature using alcohol.
Just to interrupt, sure. They deconstruct and then reconstruct the molecule.
100%.
Okay.
Right. So they take triglyceride, which kind of by definition, you have this backbone and then these 3 fatty groups that go off of it, and they cut those off. And then they are able to purify it such that you get much higher levels of just a couple of fats. So instead of having what is found in an actual fish, which is tons of different types of lipids, you're in essence concentrating it down to get mostly 2. DHA and EPA are the ones that most people are concerned about. And I think it's relevant to talk about what you brought up before, which is that makes sense within the pharmaceutical model. So certainly if you go to a formulary and you're trying to bring down triglycerides, a high potency, heavily refined fish oil is what's been studied. But the difference is asking this question of what is most associated with best overall health outcomes. And the answer to that is eating fish. It's not taking a fish oil product. So then you ask the question, which everyone should ask, which is what is the difference? And we've actually done our own analyses to see what is the difference between what is in a minimally processed fish oil versus what is in a conventionally produced fish oil. And what people may not understand is that kind of by weight, fish oil and fish fat is a whole family of different lipids. It's not just DHA and EPA. That is absolutely the end product of a pharmaceutical type of refining of that fish in order to extract those things. But if you were to eat a piece of salmon, yes, you're getting DHA, yes, you're getting EPA, but it turns out you're getting a lot of other stuff. And what we found in analysis of these minimally processed oils is you're actually getting fats like oleic acid, an omega-9 fatty acid that is one of the fats found in higher concentrations in olive oil, which who would have thought?
Yeah.
But the point here being that the closer you are to a actual fish, the closer you're able to get to the set of nutrients that is found in a fish. And, the further you are from this highly refined version that people have become infatuated with, but doesn't actually represent what the best data tell us about consumption of fish.
I want to talk in part two. Our listeners know we divide our podcast into two parts. But in part two, I want to talk about some of these ineffable ingredients that are kind of left on the cutting room floor when you refine fish oil, as is the industry standard. I think that there's some great products out there. I think, some of the products are a little sketchy. If you go to Costco and, it's like $9.99 for 500 capsules, you may not be getting necessarily the best. But some of the higher quality, some of the better brands, they do test for mercury and they test for PCBs, and you get at least you're assured of a clean product, but you may be missing some of these important ingredients. I think the analogy is between purified olive oil, deodorized olive oil, which some people like because they don't, Americans don't have a palate for olive oil, and that rich aromatic olive oil that you get from Chile or from Tuscany that is cold pressed and it's not damaged by the process. And we'll talk a little bit about that in part two. Our guest is Austin Perlmutter. He's Chief Science Officer of Big Bold Health, which is a great company founded by Dr. Jeffrey Bland. And I think it's a wonderful professional opportunity for you to work with Jeff on his projects there. Folks, I just my personal choice these days for fish oil is the fish oil made by Big Bold Health. It's called Omega-3 Rejuvenate. And so check it out. There's a special offer for Intelligent Medicine listeners. BigBoldHealth.com/Hoffman and use coupon code Hoffman for 20% off site-wide. That's BigBoldHealth.com/Hoffman. When we return, more on the products and research that's underway at Big Bold Health via its Chief Science Officer, Austin Perlmutter, MD. This is the Intelligent Medicine Podcast.